talking about service, a lot of us have grown up going to this CFO. We've been here 19 years out of our 23 years. Growing up, there was nursery, kids, youth being served. People, the older generation modeling that, passing it on, and then saying, hey, we see you, we want you to come lead with us. Let's show you how to do it. And then they're like, hey, you have a story, I want you to share it. You have this gifting, I want you to do that. And you just get to step out in so many different areas. And then, like has been talked about, see the direct results of that. And it's such an encouragement, it's so empowering. And it's so much more of a blessing being on this end sometimes. It's incredible. So.
We're really excited because this momentum to really put our heads, our minds, and our hearts together was first the charge was officially given last fall. And the charge is this: to create a sustainable system that continuously identifies, trains, and empowers the next generation of courageous leaders. Now that statement is pretty heavy and incredibly packed full with quite a vision, right? And so we're going to sort of take that apart to help define and explain and explore what those words mean. But before I do that, I just want to go back to that video. As we've been seeing throughout the week, the young people who probably didn't realize at that time their words would go far. And yet their transparency, their honesty, really you hear that there's a heart cry, right? It's not just, well, this was nice and I kind of want to keep doing this. No, there was something in each of them who spoke that sees the possibility of what can happen when people are raised up into their callings, the callings that God has placed on their lives. So he mentioned just a few things that really stood out to me. He starts out by talking about service. Okay, so the idea is the servant leader, someone who wants to do something for others. And he kept saying he's recognized over the years, because he's been in CFO a long time, there's been serving and serving and serving. He sees that. It's not something subtle. And he notices the older generations who are serving the younger generations. It's not limited to the peer group or the age group. Oh, I'm only going to serve people who I'm comfortable with. It's that stepping out, that handing down, passing down the baton, the modeling, and he even used the word passing it on. So just try to hold on to that notion, like the relay runner, passing the baton. And that has to be done in such a way that there's a smooth transition, but it has to be practiced and acknowledged. And then he said, we see you. Something about when younger people, and I'm going to speak to my own family. I have a couple of 20-somethings and a 19-year-old, and sometimes it feels like they just want to not be seen. Like, I'm going to go where I want to go. And you do your thing and I'll do my thing. But you know what? I've seen quite truly and quite closely that those children, my children, that generation wants to know that we care, that they matter, and what they're thinking has a place in this world today, even if it's not always neatly displayed and expressed. So he said that he sensed people, the older generations in CFO, we want you to lead with us. Okay, that was a very confident statement. He didn't question that. And he knows that he sensed the mentor leaders in CFO are showing those generations how to do it, to step out in many areas. These are all words that we've been using throughout the leadership training development. And then he saw there was encouragement, empowerment, And then he said, and it's a blessing. He said, on this end, like, it's not just you're teaching me, but you're actually blessing me, you're affirming me, and you're calling me out. Didn't Jesus do that? He did it to the most unlikely souls. He saw them. He called them up. He called them out, even when they didn't really understand. What am I doing? This doesn't feel like me. So that is the environment that we want to create through this leadership training program. And another thing I wanted to point out was in the word education, which has two Latin roots. Some of you might know this. One of them is, and please excuse my pronunciation, educare, which means to train or to mold. And the other one, educare, meaning to lead out. So education is actually not put in. There is some putting in, but it's really, at its root, it's drawing out. It's leading out. Now, how do we look at that in the framework of a course, of a curriculum? So we're going to be talking about that. A curriculum that's sustainable, that continuously identifies, that sees people, seeks them, and draws them in, trains them, gives them the tools, gives them the resources, creates an environment where growth is going to happen optimally, and then empowers to go out. And Jesus, the ultimate mentor leader, he did that a lot, right? And even when they were like, really? We got to do this? And he sent them in groups too. A lot of it was going in their cohort. So we're going to talk about that model of cohort as we look at the class that we're developing. And then lastly, I just wanted to say that we are saying yes. CFO is saying yes to the desires of emerging generations who want to fulfill their role in God's kingdom. So again, this has to be done intentionally. And so in this curriculum, and really the desire for the greater good of drawing out and training up and raising up mentors and leaders, we believe that we want to follow a course that's so excellent and world-class that it's going to be recognized by people in our communities. A pathway to discover and fulfill the calling God has placed in their lives. So a pathway implies a journey, right? You don't have it all together. Oh, maybe I have my degree from whatever university. Oh, wait, now what do I do, right? So this is an idea that there's process. It's a pathway. And another component for this mentoring leadership is the critical impact for the world, for God's kingdom. And when that continues to be driving into the lives and the words that we use, the resources and tools and the opportunities within the class, and I'll discuss that shortly, how we set up each of the classes, there is always an acknowledgement of what we're doing for God, what our purpose is for Him. And lastly, that very practical, but also very necessary, providing tools and experiences to reach the fullness of who God created them to be. You notice that we're using that constant variable, it's not a variable, it's a constant, that God is not changing, but He has put in each of us unique giftings. But a lot of times we haven't tapped into all of those. So that's part of, and really, what we believe is the optimal environment in this curriculum. Now, imagine that we're going to be that eagle for a moment, and we have some beautiful opportunities this week to step in to a new perspective. Well, I had a chance yesterday with my husband when we went to the Mount St. Helens Visitor Center. We had a chance to step out a little bit, and there was a park across the street, a state park. And we're just naturally explorers. We do a lot of hiking, and I know that God speaks to me very powerfully in the natural world. But we were drawn to this park, and watch what happened. This is going to be, don't look away because something really cool is going to happen. Imagine you're the eagle, and starting out from on high. All right, so that was a bit of a swift drop down into this, elevation, if you will. Now, I'm not sure the eagle flies that fast, but Adam found this really cool thing through Google Earth where you can take the photo that you took, and then that's the photo I took, the one before this with a tree, and it can identify that exact location on the earth and start from the atmosphere. Is that not really cool? So I was out there with Steve, and wouldn't you know, God gave me a perfect metaphor for what we want to do with leadership and mentoring in terms of the greater body, CFO, and then the world. And how I got this was starting with this information board. So I'm a student, I'm a learner, so I'm curious. I'm looking at it. Now, I'm not expecting you to read those. I'm going to give you a couple of definitions that I learned when I went last night on an hour-long journey looking up things about forests. And, I have never been I've been here before, but in the Pacific Northwest, the forest is very different than in New England. But what did God want me to see? He wanted me to see more closely the detail. And so he took me, he was my mentor leader in just this 1 hour time. And I was looking at this chart and I was saying, wow, there's arrows and there's this whole idea of a cycle of succession. And I'm thinking, how does leadership and mentoring fit into this? Well, the older trees, the older generation is providing both the shade, the canopy, and then as that deteriorates and disintegrates, that becomes all of the fertile soil for the new growth. I mean, I'm like, God, are you kidding me? This is so cool. And of course, all of the rest of my notes had to go away, and I just had to put this in. But I want to read to you in my little journey, and I will not make this too long, but you can picture me last night. It was like in the morning. And it was just a few hours ago. Okay, so I looked up on one of the websites is the Department of Natural Resources for Minnesota. Now, there's old growth forests. This is an old growth forest, and there are many of them, but they are in danger. I mean, this is no surprise because the wood is in demand. So they define an old-growth forest as a forest that has developed over a long period of time, essentially free from catastrophic disturbances. They contain large old trees of long-lived species that are beyond traditional rotation age. High-quality old-growth forests also have relatively complex stand structure. Okay, that basically means the way trees are able to survive and thrive in the forest. Okay, so when there's snags, I guess they're falling down, and then the woody debris is another form of that tree. So these complex stand structures and high stand mortality with few invasive species. And they also include rare species or native plant communities. Now, I'm not expecting that you're going to, we're not going to give you a quiz on all this, but this is another thing about the generational impact. Listen, the mixed age of the forest is an important criterion in ensuring that the forest is a relatively stable ecosystem in the long term. Do you get that? I was like, God, this is so obvious. Why didn't I see this? And then typical characteristics of old growth forests include the presence of older trees, minimal signs of human disturbance. Well, I take that to be, the enemy trying to get in and destroy our plans. Mixed age stands, the presence of canopy openings due to tree falls, and so forth and so on. So what you have here, my friends, is the biodiversity and the ecological complexity that is actually representing, and we know that God displays his glory in creation. So he's saying that for this forest to survive and sustain, it needs the older growth of the higher trees, which have a canopy to protect the new growth of the plants below. And then there are trees that fall through various circumstances, hopefully not interference by humans, which allows sunlight to get through, and so forth and so on. So I was jumping around last night because, so these trees are massive. Okay, there is an awe and wonder. And I'm thinking how those young people see the older generations with respect and with a curiosity and I kind of want to hang out with you, but not always permission sometimes. Like, that's not always a given. In this course, we're going to be talking about how people are going to, in the adventurous pursuit, be called into community. In this case, we'll be doing small cohorts and working together over the course of 16 weeks. So I'll be talking about that shortly. But I was very taken. This is another example of that diversity and that the differentiation of the needs of all of the members of the ecosystem. And I really loved how the lower plants are clustering around the taller trees, right? And I didn't put it in a picture, but there was a dead tree that was laying, a huge tree. When you see it lying on its side, it's not to be forgotten. In fact, it stands out. But in that tree, inside the trunk that's now no longer living, there's all this growth and moss. And anyway, it's enchanting. So I invite you to step into the old growth forest to learn about a lot more about people, leadership, and mentoring. So in the Thriving Camp presentation, as I was listening with the ears of someone who has gone to camp for about 22 years with my family and thinking about the things that have contributed and built me up in my spiritual walk. I became a Christian, a born-again Christian at age 38. So, when you look at tree life, that's still pretty young, right? It's all relative. And so for me, I've gone beyond the milk stage, but I am learning that I can get, I know, she's out there going, what? I am learning that actually there's maturity in me that I don't always recognize. Okay? And this comment from the silent generation, which in this gathering, that's not silent at all. They're not silent at all. Mary Martha, to name a few. This is a place where we encourage each other, a place where I can connect with younger followers of Christ, pray for them, and mentor as God leads. Now, did this person know all about the mentoring leadership program? No, but there is inherent in this comment is exactly what we need. We need to start to make it intentional, and we need to put it together soon because there's a great need and a great urgency. So I want to show you a graphic that will give you some idea of how the mentoring leadership is at the core, it's at the heart of various aspects of certainly CFO, and you can see on the horizontal, the council ring leaders, program element leaders, all very important roles of leadership, which have for years been a big bedrock, right, for the camps. If the council ring is not moving forward and making Spirit-led decisions with prayer and deliberation and coming back again and again, if that isn't happening, the camp may not thrive. So that's all leadership. And mentoring, maybe not everyone aware that they're mentoring, but it is a very important part. And then you see, of course, during the camps, the program leaders, absolutely critical to getting a hold of people's hearts, of transformation, of even dropping little nuggets, right? Sometimes it takes the second or third year, which is one of the reasons why we want to continue through the year, that sustainability about the things that have been spoken over people, the things that we identify in the camp, but there's that sense it kind of stops. Not on purpose, but the camp is limited. So in our leadership development program, we want to see something that continues through the year and begins to be sustained succession after succession in a cycle of handing off, passing it on, as Terry said last night, a pass it on ministry, right? So I'm going to talk about that more specifically in a minute. The other thing that would set this leadership, this mentoring leadership program apart is the whole notion of mentoring. And I want to just help you understand. That's a word that's used a lot in many different settings. I personally, as a teacher, I was mentored by a retired teacher when I set foot in the very first classroom. I was 35 years old, certainly not new to life, but brand new career. I stepped in a classroom with nothing but desks and chairs. It was one of those, you have to add another class, another, section in first grade because we have too many kids in the other classes. So here I was. Now, I walked into that room and I wanted to turn right around. It's like, this isn't very cozy. Who's going to decorate my room? Who's going to give me all the books and the supplies? Because they weren't sitting there waiting for me to unpack them. But the retired teacher who was identified and volunteered, she came in. Oh my gosh, her name is Jane. She took me to the public library. Very good idea. Get books in those kids' hands. The very first day, it's pretty much all I had. And maybe some coloring paper. The fact is, I wasn't prepared for that first day, but I had someone to walk alongside me. Now, I've become a mentor in my most recent job as an elementary school teacher. Again, it's a formal program where you're assigned a beginning teacher, and the goal is to assist them to complete some paperwork. I'm going to be honest. It's really about checking off the box, all right? There's nothing in the paperwork really about your relationship, all right? Your vulnerability, your inspiration. Where's the question period? Where's the time to walk in the classroom of each other and take a look? That's not really in there. And it's just the way things work in institutions, all right? Unfortunately, the bureaucracy takes over. But I can tell you that I went beyond that list of things that you're supposed to do, and I just simply said, can I come visit your class and hang out in there? And again, that's what we've been talking about. The ability to love people, to support them, to give them space, I didn't say, okay, let me tell you how to do your first, second, third lesson. I just came in. I was a presence for her. And then we developed a friendship. It took some time to trust. But a mentor, in the definition, is an experienced and trusted advisor. So I love the word trusted. That's not a given. You can say, here, I'd like you to meet the person you're going to be mentoring. Instant trust? I don't think so. That takes time. Then the definition of mentoring, which is built into our title of our course, is the act or process of helping and giving advice to a younger or less experienced person. So again, I want to highlight the word process, right? So let's just think briefly about the plentiful biblical examples of mentors and leaders. There's countless examples through the Bible. And actually, I was thinking about, you had these, yesterday, Terry, you had the scripture from Genesis. So who did Abram hear from? Who was his ultimate mentor? God himself, right? And then there was this handoff, go, make, right? He didn't say, okay, first you do this, then you do that, then it was so beautifully, that's God. It's perfect in his way. And Abram was obedient. Then you think of Elijah and Elisha, okay? Just, again, relationship, experienced, trusted. He's been through his wild, exciting, and very threatening experiences in life. And then Elisha comes into the picture. And then, of course, in the New Testament, we have Paul and Timothy. And then Jesus, Chell, on the first night, talked to us about Luke 5, about stepping out of the boat. But I was going back to that passage to think about Jesus as a mentor and a leader. So he went into the boat with Peter. And he gave him basically some advice, right? How are you going to fix the problem? You're not getting any fish, right? Didn't he give him? He didn't say, you're doing it all wrong, Peter. I've got a much better idea. If you'd only been listening to me and watching me, I would have, is that going to make an imprint? Of course not. But what's interesting is he didn't grab the nets. Jesus didn't grab the nets and put it in the water. He said, put them in the water. That's mentoring, where you look, you identify, you empower, you bless, and then you say, go, do it. So I just wanted to use those examples. And I think what we're really excited about in this curriculum is that beyond the camps and CFO, which are absolutely very important for us to consider the application, is how this impacts the world. What's the greater impact in our organizations, our communities, the marketplace? I think this has huge ramifications because it brings excellence into how leaders lead and how they're recognizing that they actually must mentor for new blood, new growth to occur. So when we got together, we took a very hard look at, we know there's a lot of leadership programs out there, okay? And books and tons of resources. But we wanted to look at this with new eyes and say, okay, what is first and foremost? The relationship with our Heavenly Savior. And we know that is it's the wellspring. It's where we are engaging in a relationship with God. That spiritual transformation is so critical, right? It's for everything we do. And then we know that we have to help people develop in their character traits and in their giftings and start to look at what they value, right? And, again, it seems like you could take that for granted. I've been in CFO for so long, and I've walked the walk and I talk the talk. And that's good to feel like you're in the flow. But don't you know, and I think many of you could say this, there are moments, and it's been referred to both in Thriving Camp, and Terry, you've referred to this, and others, that there are critical points in CFO where you have a revelation. I didn't know that about myself. Maybe it's in rhythms, and you feel something happened where something was released, right? It's ongoing, folks. This doesn't just stop when you finish your degree. I think this is so important. So that character development and the values that we want to give our participants, the opportunity to go deeper, to reflect, to pray, and to really seek God. Who am I? What was I made for? And then thirdly, and not less important, is how we relate. This is where a lot of work needs to be done. I'll be the first to say, I'm quick to my anger and my words, and not so, quick to respond in love. I can't develop that if I don't look around me and practice and be in that environment, I mean, here, I didn't know a lot of you, and did we have to share our resumes to find out, well, let me see, now she's got that's just very similar to me, or she has this many kids. No, we went pretty deep right away. And worship is another one of those incredible opportunities. This is one of a side comment, but how we do life together in this very short amount of time, it's astounding. I will tell you, the people who have come and prayed for me, whether it was something really simple or for today, where does that happen? That grows out of the valuing of relationships. That's the horizontal environment, and that's the vertical with God. And what does that make? The cross. So the mentoring leadership implies the give and take of modeling and guiding each other to bring out the best qualities, because we want a program of excellence that is not like other programs. And that is a very tall order. And it's not about the best books. And even the most highly qualified instructors, and we want them, we want to seek out really excited and informed and experienced and spirit-filled instructors. We don't have those names in front of us, but so you can be praying. But there is something that we want to build, a structure that goes beyond just knowing things. It's being able to mentor and go out and call forth leaders, new leaders. Okay, the moment you've been waiting for, we're going to talk about the course. All right, so here it is. It's a cohort-based instruction, which means cohort is a group of people. In this case, we're looking for about 6 to 8 people to join us in the pilot, which we're going to be starting in April. So I'll give you a timeline shortly. So that cohort is a group of people with a shared characteristic, people working together, moving along to be transformed, and to go deeper and be reflective based on all the materials and the activities and the prayer, and then I'm going to talk about that. It's going to be infused in everything we do in the course. And the successive course levels, so we have this vision that we want to have this class start off with some really important foundational elements, and then that cohort will have the opportunity to go to the next level. And it's not unlike what happens in our educational system. When you've become good at something and you've got closure, you've got your tools, you've got your experience, and you've changed, that's really at the heart of this, and then you move on to the next level, to the point where it could be a master class, very much tailored to different types of the spiritual giftings, the specific areas in business, things that are customized at that master level. And we really want to look into, and we haven't done it, we don't have all the information, but the idea of certification. And for those of you who understand CEUs, which is a form of, it's a kind of, continuing education units, yeah. So, that has value for jobs, for, that shows that you've done something, and that's something we would like to see if we can incorporate, because that can really make a difference for our leaders and our mentors. And then lastly, a new revenue stream for CFO. We're working on how much we're going to be charging for this class and how much we will pay our excellent instructors. That's very important. This is not a volunteer job. So the class is going to be divided into 4 modules. Learning to lead and mentor is going to be divided into these 4 modules. Each one will be 4 weeks long and have a specific focus. So we begin in Module 1, Defining Leadership. And I'll show you a little bit more about that in the next slide. Module 2, Understanding Character. Module 3, Developing Leadership Skills. Module 4, Understanding the Responsibilities. So see that as your final phase, getting ready to go out. I mean, this is really key, how that happens, the transition, and it's not just ending there. So the really important thing we want to convey from the leadership team is that every single module, the 4th week, is all prayer. Okay? That does set us apart. Not just pray a little bit here, a little bit there. This is really committing intentionally to 4 areas. In Module 1, exploring your calling, asking the Lord, Holy Spirit, seeking Him. Module 2, healing. I mean, does that transform people? When you find you get healed on different levels, that's going to be week 4 in Module 2. Module 3, words of knowledge. The prophetic, speaking into the lives of our emerging leaders and mentors. And Module 4 will be about blessings. So picture the blessing service, but really expanded to get people ready, to equip them and to bless them and to pray over them. What a difference that makes when you've got to go out into the world and be your leader, mentor, when you're going to be facing many challenges. So that is something we want to make sure you know that is very much at the heart of this class, this course. So here's an example of how we break down the 4 weeks for the first module. And again, this is the focus on even defining what leadership is. And you'll see there's a progression, being able to recognize who you are, being able to, how do you tell that story in a way that's in some ways vulnerable, but you share it and you actually start that relationship when you start talking about who you are and what your heart is desiring. Defining a leader, week 2. Week 3, servant leaders. We take a really deep dive into that. And then there's our prayer focus, exploring your calling. So that's over 4 weeks. And what we set up, and you'll see it in the timeline, is there's a month in between the modules. So these 16 weeks is spread out over several months with the idea of reviewing after each module, how did we do? That would be the leadership team going back in and saying, okay, was this effective? And talking to the instructor, not the students looking at it yet, but giving really hard look at things that we need to change, we need to refine. We're developing resources. There's so much there, but scripture also, what are the key verses that go along with each of the levels of learning? And then I want you to see this slide, because with Thriving Camp, there's so many parallels. And I really want for you to see this, because this was a slide that was part of Thriving Camp. You see, those are the core values of CFO. Those same values are embedded in this curriculum. And that is what leadership, the highest level of leading and mentoring, calls for. Okay? So, and I really want to point out, mentoring is really about cruciformity. It's actually, it was said to actually say that I'm losing my job, in a sense, in the best sense. I'm handing over, right? I'm stepping back. I have made an impact in different ways, but I'm going to go and I'm going to say, bless you, release the person I'm mentoring. So I wanted you to see that parallel. And then one other thing that really struck me, and there's, having leadership today was very intentional, because we want to then see, and you'll see in the presentation coming by Michelle, that there is a beautiful cohesion. Governance, Thriving Camp, leadership. Leadership feeds into governance. I guess I see some nodding. Yes, it is critical. So these outcomes, that can all be said of a healthy mentoring leadership program. And, Terry was speaking to that when he came up during Thriving Camp, and he spoke to it again last night. And I just want to reiterate some things he said. He said that we journey alongside people with tenderness. We open up the doors for them to have revelation and illumination of their heart. We want to see the wholeness of the person, and we want to see transformation. We don't want people to leave our camps going, oh yeah, this is nice, but kind of same old, same old. No. This is a class, this is a course that sets people on a course for change, for transformative change. And then we also want to point out, I want to point out that Terry said that this cohort, you're not alone. You're going to be paired with a mentor during that 16 weeks. We're working that out. But we know that mentoring that we're asking leaders to do has to start with being mentored. So that's reciprocation that we see is so vital in this process. And then I just want to tie it back to our organizational goals. All right, we've seen these words before, right? So as a leadership team, we looked at the course that we're building, and we said, is it flexible? Is it something that people can take and use and apply? Or is it just a bunch of knowledge? So we want to make sure that we infuse that in the course. And then affordable. This is a big one, because there are people who we know could really benefit and would grow so much, but will say, I don't have the money. So we're working on an affordability and also removing barriers. That it's going to be a virtual platform in the pilot, so that means it's accessible, right? So people can be in this course and not have to be in person. Would it ideally one day be a cohort in person? Absolutely. But that's the beauty of the technology we have. And then sustainable. Just like that ecosystem, that forest, that old growth forest, there's sustainability built in to the processes of aging, of decaying, of passing away, and then building up, and it's a cycle. And that is so key. We really want this course to be perpetuating so that the people in the pilot, when they finish, some of them may want to be mentors to the next round of people, and so on and so forth. You see? And then you grow, and you grow, and you grow. And then lastly, our timeline. Just as we showed in the other presentations, there is a timeline here. And so what's important is that the people who will be coming into this first pilot have an opportunity to apply. And that is something we're working on, how to get that out to people. And I would dare to say that actually there may be people that you're thinking of right now, and maybe even yourselves, that would like to jump in and be part of this testing, this first round with the course. So we have the applications will be due at the end of January, and then we are setting up interviews. We want to hear from people. What is your heart saying? Why do you want to do this? And how can we fit this into the way you see God using you in your life? And so we would then choose the cohort in March. The course begins April 1st. No fooling. And then we'll have that 4-week first module. All right. Then a month off. There will be things to connect from module 1 to 2, but it's not going to, the class will not meet. And then we start up with module 2 in June. Then a break in July, August, module 3, September, and then October, module 4. And in between there, I know it's hard to see here, but there is a time for that review. It's very important. When you have something, a new product, you have to find out, is it working? All right, but being very honest about that and developing the curriculum materials, the content will be developed all the way through. So it's a continuous thing, yeah. It's a tall order. We got a lot of work to do. But this is it. We've got to do this. We want to do this. That's what we're saying. Do you believe that? And so here we are. And we're going to have time for questions and some answers. I want to just say, really, the participation in this effort, I am being transformed. And I was even saying this morning, I feel like we're like the pre-pilot cohort, because we've been doing, no, seriously, we are a cohort working intensely, and we're seeking the Lord. What do you want for this? What do you want for CFO as leaders and these people who are saying, hey, I see you. We see you. Do you hear me? There's so many things right now, as you know, that I don't have to give you examples. There are many of them, and we've seen them in the young people. But I am so honored that I could be and continue. I'm committed to going forward with this, if it is to happen, and if it's God who's going to make it happen. So I thank you for listening, and I'm sure you have lots of questions.